indivisible. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Sex and race, because they are easy, visible differences, have been the primary ways of organizing human beings into superior and inferior groups, and into the cheap labor on which this system still depends.
Hello, and welcome to Rainbow Shelter News. This is Ozma in the Dark, regularly hosting this particular news commentary setup. Obviously, I'm not a journalist, nor do I have journalistic qualification. I'm merely commenting on the news that I find interesting, and to some degree reading out the news I find interesting because it seems to be the stuff that's affecting, to give people a better context on what's happening in the world. At the very least, from my perspective, as limited as it is. Anyways, I try to be as intersectional as possible, and I welcome I welcome feedback if you have any. So, as usual, we start off with the grimmer stories. A black trans woman, Keisha Chanel Getter, killed in Georgia recently. A 26-year-old black trans woman was shot and killed in Augusta, Georgia earlier this month. It was fatally shot outside a Night's Inn on July 20th, where she'd been traveling with a friend. According to Rights Campaign. Jabari Allen, 22, of Augusta, Georgia, has been charged with murder and possession of a firearm during the commission of the crime, which a local news station reports, while dead naming Getter, because of course they did. Allen may face additional charges. Station report that Getter's family has been promoting that Trans Lives Matter movement. But yeah, along with that, 2 more trans Americans have died by violence, bringing the 2022 total of violent deaths among transgender, non-conforming, and non-binary people in the U.S. up to 20, although those are the ones we know about. And I swear it feels like more. But maybe because I sometimes cover elsewhere in the world. Anyways, Charmaine Giselle Marie McClum, a black trans woman, was shot to death at her apartment in Gulfport, Mississippi, June 21st, reports the Sun Herald, a local newspaper. Makari Seven Gasawe, 20, has been arrested and charged with first-degree murder and aggravated assault. In a fight with McClure, which escalated. Chicago, Martasia Richmond, also black trans women, because black trans women have the greatest risk of ending up with a violent, unnecessary death, was stabbed to death on July 11th. Transcripts report she was found on the porch of a home there when police responded to a complaint of domestic battery. I may or may not have covered that one, but police have arrested Daniel Burley, who is described as Richmond's partner, according to the Chicago Journal, which of course dead named the victim, which is a common practice among a lot of news outlets. A Chicago man. Oh, this is more continuation. Daniel Burley. Daniel Burley. That was the second one mentioned. So, a trans prisoner with indeterminate sentence takes own life on the day of London Trans Pride. A trans prisoner at HMP Eastwood Park in Leicestershire took his own life on the same day of London Trans Pride. Taylor was housed in a women's prison despite living openly as a trans man, and was held on an imprisonment for public protection sentence, which is indeterminate. IPP sentences were introduced in the UK in 2005, targeted at serious offenders who, although they were thought to pose an ongoing risk to public safety, did not merit a life sentence. An IPP sentence means that the prisoner serves a minimum time in custody, and after which they can only be released on a parole board if a parole board agrees that this is safe. This can mean that prisoners are kept behind bars for far longer than their initial crime indicates. IPP sentences were abolished in 2012, but not retrospectively for those who had already been given them. According to the government, as of September 2021, there are 1,661 offenders continuing to serve IPP sentences in prison, having never been released. Taylor friends have described his IPP sentence as a death sentence. He was given 4 years for burglary, but served 14 years before he died. They explained. The long-term imprisonment with no end date totally destroyed Taylor's mental health. He attempted suicide multiple times, and it eventually killed him. Death became the only option for Taylor as all legal doors up to freedom closed again and again, they added. And it's a prison that's been plagued with allegations of abuse. So, Arizona prison system basically admits to practicing slavery. Which, I mean, it's been the case, but like, it is interesting for them when they go mask off like that. So the American prison system has often been described as a new form of slavery. This, of course, being because of the fact that they actively target Black people and give them longer sentences, and then, you know, you have people paid little or no money for labor. So yeah, it is basically, oh, you jaywalked, you're in prison for a couple of years, and you know, you work for the state. Now, a prison official in Arizona has essentially acknowledged that this is the case, all while making the argument that the state needs to be able to force people to work for it. Such a bold admission has reawakened calls to reform or even abolish prisons and the system of mass incarceration. Yes, but also, technically speaking, under capitalism, there is a need for underpaid labor. I mean, this is part of the reason why we're reaching the peak problems of capitalism in the system we have now. But yeah, Arizona. So Arizona communities need cheap prison labor, according to officials. So David Shin, Arizona Department of Corrections director, raised eyebrows with a comment he made while testifying about a new private prison contract in the state, referring to work done by inmates of a prison in the city of Florence. Shin argued that the prisoners provided services that could not otherwise be performed at a rate that most jurisdictions could never afford. If you were to remove these folks from that equation, Shin argued, things would collapse in many of your counties for your constituents. In other words, the state needs to be able to make people work without paying them, which is a fundamental form of capitalism, and prison systems have essentially been a way of, or at least a lot of prison systems in America have been a way of putting a band-aid or possibly even a blindfold over people, so they don't, to try to make sure people don't notice that connection. Several commentators were quick to notice that the logic used in Arizona sounds an awful lot like a rationale for keeping slavery in the American South before the Civil War. Not what happens when society. This is what happens when society uses slavery to function, posted one user on Twitter. But like, yes, capitalism. Basically, people are waking up to the problem with prison systems, and its aspects of prisons of slavery in prisons have been bleeding over to the day-to-day life of the average white person. And so, yeah, they're, it's awful. 23-year-old black man shot execution style by California. A 23-year-old man was fatally shot while running from San Bernardino police in California. Surveillance footage shows an officer firing at Robert Adams just seconds after pulling up in an unmarked vehicle. Security camera footage shows two officers driving up in an unmarked car around 8 p.m. as Adams stood in the parking lot. Police in San Bernardino, California, fatally shot 23-year-old Robert Adams execution style. It's reported Robert didn't know there were police in the unmarked car before he ran for his life. You know, because police are basically villains in slasher films. They just are a little bit pickier and tend to make sure the people they go after are neurodivergent or black. Or both. We need a full investigation to this horrific execution. Adams ran from the officers when they stepped out of their vehicle car. The clip shows that within seconds of getting out of the car, one of the officers fired at Adams from a distance, causing Adams to hit the floor. The two officers have not been identified, but Adams' family asked for murder charges to be filed against them because they committed murder. Since the video's release, Adams' family has been urging authorities to file murder charges against the officers who have not been identified. The two officers were considered to be with a quote-unquote specialized investigation unit and were quote-unquote conducting surveillance in an unmarked vehicle after quote-unquote receiving information that a black man armed with a gun was in the parking lot. San Bernardino Police Department said in a statement. I don't believe them. I don't believe they go and shoot an unarmed man for no reason. The two police officers say they gave verbal instructions after stepping on the unmarked car and that Adams had a gun in his hand as he ran. But there's video saying the opposite, it seems. So, yeah. So, not dead yet applauds court ruling in California euthanasia case. The Not Dead Yet National Disability Rights Group applauds the Federal District Court of Northern California for its June 22nd ruling against expanding California's doctor-assisted suicide law to allow euthanasia. This auspicious day also marked the 23rd anniversary of the Supreme Court decision in Olmstead, which established our right to be free from institutions. Unfortunately, the fights against euthanasia and institutionalization are not over. If you are not aware, the reasoning for the fight against assisted suicide in a lot of cases, and euthanasia. Wait, what's the difference between assisted suicide and euthanasia? Oh, okay, perfect. Yeah, it's just I mean, euthanasia is a type of assisted, but like the concern is oftentimes there's a lack of oversight, and along with the general attitude that people need to live in a particular way. So as a person depends on full-time breathing support, I've been deeply concerned about the Shavelson v. Bonta case. Euthanasia involves lethal drugs administered by medical providers rather than being self-administered, and poses a direct threat to people with disabilities. It would deny disabled people the equal protections of laws against homicide. Gotcha. It started when Not Dead Yet 26 years ago during Dr. Jack Kevorkian's days of assisting the suicides of disabled people who were clearly not terminally ill. Some people viewed assisted suicide as a sort of reasonable accommodation to enable people who have serious physical impairments to have the same access to suicide as non-disabled people, which no. That's, you put people in a position where death looks like the best option and then help them kill themselves is not no. One of the assisted suicide laws require that the individual cannot commit suicide without assistance, and opponents offer how-to guides. Further, healthy and non-disabled suicidal people are very likely to survive a suicide attempt rather than die, but assisted suicide bills have never included eligibility for them, so that reasonable accommodation thing doesn't hold up. So basically, it's not helping people suicide. It's very much so it's there is a genuine, when it comes to bodily autonomy, there is a genuine argument that people should be allowed to do with what they want with their body, even if that entails death. However, I don't, with the general lack, the problem is a lot more in line with how society works at the moment. And the problem is, because of how society works, most of the people are not, who end up going through with it, have, you know, questionable consent to it, levels of consent, if they're in distress, or any number of other things. Also, there's a lot of basically what most people think assisted suicide is not what the sorts of situations where people do get assisted suicide or end up with it. It's like, if people feel like they're too much of a burden, doctors are like, oh, okay, assisted suicide is understandable because, you know, society making you feel like you're a burden is totally valid reasoning for you dying. Like, no, fuck you. So, Laguna Honda Hospital has 60 days to move over 600 patients before it shuts down. It's only placed 48 so far. So the Laguna Hospital opened up in 1866 to care for the city's poor and indigent. Whatever. Now, over 150 years later, federal officials have threatened to shut down the hospital, which operates as a skilled nursing facility because of failed inspections prompted by 2 non-fatal drug overdoses that occurred on site. In order to be recertified to operate, Laguna Honda must move out over 600 of its residents and has until September 13th to make that happen. So far, they've only moved 48 patients. What happened to the hospital and how will these patients be taken care of? Yeah, okay, apparently. I didn't know it was more of an interview, but like, yeah, so, school board candidate in Florida. This is doctors who help trans kids should be hung from the nearest tree. School board candidate in Florida was met with applause when she announced that she believes that doctors who care for trans kids should be hung from the nearest tree. Elizabeth Janai Lancaster is running to represent Santa Rosa School Board's 3rd District in Pensacola, Florida, and on Monday gave a speech at a candidates forum organized by the far-right group Gulf Coast Patriots, because of course they like to call themselves patriots. So Lancaster, a former law enforcement officer, already drops her even lower on my bar. Of course, she's a former law enforcement officer. Said, the welfare and protection of the students is my first and foremost priority. And by that, she means I need my students to be as normal as possible. I assume that's the reasoning that she's using, but this is one of the main reasons I decided to run. I'm against any of that social engineering project, especially in parentheses, probably critical race theory or any ideologies that do not belong in the school platform. We're here to teach people, but not about certain things. People shouldn't know about the real world if they're children. Oh, sorry. The children should not be burdened by the woke agenda that is leaving a path of destruction everywhere it goes. What is this destruction? Who knows? Oh, wait, no. A path of destruction caused by right-wing people murdering people. Definitely the fault of the victims, right? After spouting conspiracy theories about gender-affirming healthcare, the Florida mother and grandmother hit out at doctors who treat trans kids. She says the doctors that are going along with mutilating these children, not happening, and prescribing hormone blockers to these kids. Kids have been prescribed hormone blockers for non-trans related purposes before. That's where we found out about hormone blockers, to stop people from having various other medical problems later on in life. But in my opinion, they should be hanging from the nearest tree. So she wants to kill doctors, or she wants to watch doctors die. So, but she doesn't want the accountability of killing them herself. That's my understanding. Also, is this is bothering me. Disturbingly, she was met with a round of applause because, of course, she was. Lancaster started off by stating that prayer should be mandatory because U.S. is founded on Judeo-Christian principles. It's clear she supports a Christian nationalist platform of mandating Christianity on all students, which ties into her transphobia. I mean, only because of how Christianity has been infiltrated by capitalism and various other problems. So, Lancaster then spouted conspiracy theories about pharmaceutical companies profit $1.3 million from a trans kid. Yeah, that's definitely the case. I mean, yeah. So, a Catholic hospital group in Illinois and Michigan has adopted a new fertility policy that explicitly discriminates against same-sex couples. I know it's shock, but if you give people more rights to discriminate, people discriminate more. And while you can argue that people being masked off all the time, at least you know who your enemies are, but yeah, so Illinois-based OSF Healthcare, owned by the Sisters of the Third Order of St. Francis, a Roman Catholic organization based in Peoria, Illinois, changed language in its fertility treatment policy to explicitly refer to opposite-sex couples only. Employees in same-sex relationships would not be covered. The Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois administers the hospital group's healthcare plan. The new policy, OSF Healthcare, which operates 15 hospitals and 132 other facilities in Illinois and Michigan, redefines infertility as, quote-unquote, the inability for a married couple of opposite-sex spouses to conceive, and states its coverage aims to assist, quote-unquote, married opposite-sex spouses in their efforts to have a child. LGBTQ advocates say it's one of the first instances in the United States of an employer explicitly excluding workers from healthcare coverage, not because of objections to particular treatment or service, but because of the employee's sexual orientation. Now, just to be clear, explicit, implicitly, and there's been a lot of implicit discrimination for a long time. The policy could be illegal under federal laws prohibiting discrimination based on sexual orientation. In 2020, the U.S. Supreme Court in Bostock v. Clayton ruled that in Bostock v. Clayton that discrimination based on sexual orientation by an employer was a violation of Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. However, the Supreme Court is changing, and they are going right down into trying to drop all that BS. They want to block people's rights. Supreme Court now is set up to block people's rights. They're going over cases so they can make it give states the right to block people's rights. Yeah, Biden did an executive order. Last year, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services updated its policy so that children born through assisted reproductive technology are considered born in wedlock, a major advance of sex married couples who use in vitro fertilization or surrogacy to have a child. But there's a Biden. Don't get me started on Biden. Defiant medical students walk out of university's white coat ceremony over anti-abortion speaker. So, a group of defiant medical students walked out of their university's white coat ceremony over a keynote speaker's anti-abortion views. Several incoming students at University of Michigan Medical School staged a walkout on Sunday to protest the university's choice of keynote speaker who has expressed anti-abortion sentiments in the past. In a clip published on Twitter, Assistant Professor Dr. Kristen Collier is seen beginning a speech which prompted a mass walkout by a group who had pressured administrative officials to cancel her participation in the ceremony. Incoming medical students walk out in the university coat ceremony as the keynote speaker is openly anti-abortion, the tweet read. A white coat ceremony is a ritual in some medical schools marking the transition of a student from the study of preclinical to clinical health sciences. Naturally, anti-abortion is not very friendly when it comes to actual clinical side of things and the side of, like, saving lives. And also, I see your markings, Tiamat. Trees, 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 trees. During the clip, Collier can be overheard begin. He addresses the quote-unquote deep wounds our community has suffered over the past weeks, continuing that during the ceremony, quote-unquote, we can focus on what matters most, coming together to support our newly accepted students and their families. As a retired MD, I salute and congratulate every one of you who followed your conscience and stood up and walked out. Late, but yeah, pride. I can't do, like, my brain is like flags and disability pride and intersex pride and trans pride and all this stuff. But yeah, police chief fired after racist recording leaks. I shot that N-word 119 times. A Mississippi police chief was terminated this week after he allegedly was caught on tape using racist slurs, as well as bragging about the number of people he shot. But surely there's no real problem with police. Sure. What problems with the system of government we have? No. What? Anyways. According to the Mississippi Center for Investigative Reporting, newly leaked audio features the voice of a white man who claims to have killed more than a dozen people in the line of duty, including one black individual whom he shot over 100 times. The outlet reports the man in the recording was identified as Sam Dobbins, a white police chief of the predominantly black town of Lexington. All the pride, especially on 88A. Yes, I forgot to mention, today is the anniversary of the signing, the 32nd, thank you, Jake Steva, the 32nd anniversary of the signing of the ADA. Wait, what? No, not the signing of it, the passing of it, right? Signing or passing? Properly passing. Because I know like the ADA got put on sidelines as soon as it was originally put out. I have killed 13 men in my career, justified, the man is heard telling another officer in the recording. In my line of duty, I have shot and killed 13 different people. He proceeded to detail one specific shooting that took place in the field. I shot that N-word 119 times, okay? I saved 67 kids in a school. I chased this MFer across the field. I got him. It was DRT, parentheses said right there. In the field, the vehicle was shot 319 times, but it was hit 119 times by me. Dear God, the brain. Yeah, signing White House at the White House on July 26, 19. The man claimed he was quickly cleared by the sheriff's office after the fatal shooting and immediately his gun back. The recording, which also involved the use of homophobic slurs, because look, if we know anything about racists, we know they're intersectional in their hate. If they hate you for being black, chances are they hate you for being queer in any way, or being intersex, or being disabled, or just being different from their wrong white man attitude. Yeah, so the recording, which also included the use of homophobic slurs, was captured and provided by Robert Lee Hooker, former Lexington officer who resigned from the department last month because all the good cops either resign or get fired. And this is just what happens far too much in the police force. That's why a lot of people use all cops are bastards. That's why that is a slogan, because the good if someone is a good person and a police officer's, chances are they won't last very long, or nowhere near as long as they should. Citing a toxic work environment. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Hooker reportedly gave the recording to the civil rights organization Julian. The group's paralegal Cardell Wright described Dobbins' alleged remarks as appalling, racist, hateful, and detrimental to the welfare of the people. That being said, the police are not required to protect you. They use the slogan protect and serve, but they are required neither to protect you nor to serve you. So, what was that Supreme Court ruling? There's a ruling based off of it. There's a ruling that says police officers are not required to help people, and that's why in Uvalde, the police officers didn't have to go in when there was a risk to their life. And it wasn't even that great of a risk. They just didn't want to go in to some degree, I'm sure. But yeah, that's a whole nother story. But yeah, so on Wednesday, the Lexington Board of Aldermen voted 3-2 to fire Dobbins. Charles Henderson is now serving as the interim police chief, although I doubt he's much better. When pressed about the number of people he's killed on his job, Dobbins told MCIR he wouldn't discuss the issue. He also denied using racist and homophobic slurs. I don't talk like that, he said. Don't. So, 6 things to know about the death of Andrew Sundberg. Wow, I'm terrible with names sometimes. The shooting of Sundberg by Minneapolis police. Because there's been absolutely nothing done by Minneapolis police. Minneapolis police are the same now as they've been. Has sparked outrage, protest, and controversy. I've been watching too much British. Yes. The killing is drawing more attention to the Minneapolis Police Department, already under heavy scrutiny due to several high-profile killings of black men. At the same time, the protests around Sundberg's death are dividing communities locally and online. Here are 6 things to know about the situation. Sundberg was killed after a 6-hour standoff with police. Police were called to apartment in Minneapolis by a mother of 2 young sons who reported 911 that Sundberg had fired shots through her apartment door, grazing her. She said he had been stalking her, and she later indicated that she reported him earlier because she did not want to potentially put his life in danger with the police officer, with the police officers. The police officers arrived and evacuated their children before engaging in a 6-hour standoff with some confrontation ended with 2 police snipers shooting Sundberg, who was soon pronounced dead in the local hospital. So Sundberg's killing sparked protests in Minnesota and outrage in social media. Demonstrators in the city have continued to call for more information about the circumstances that led police to Sundberg. Members of Sundberg's family can allow them to help intervene during the standoff. Civil rights said demanded answers for why police shot Sundberg amid mental health crisis. So Sundberg's shootings lay several high-profile killings of black men in Minneapolis. The Minneapolis Police Department has been under intense scrutiny after the 2020 murder of George Floyd by then MPD officer Derek Chauvin, who is currently in prison after being convicted of killing Floyd. 3 other officers who were involved in the killing have also been jailed for crimes relating to Floyd's death. Further protests against MPD rose earlier this year after the police killing of Amir Locke. It has been revealed that the 2 police officers who shot and killed Sundberg, SWAT team members Aaron Pearson and Zachary Serafine, were also involved in Locke's. Police claim that killing Sundberg was necessary to protect themselves and civilians. So, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey has released a statement with interim police chief Amelia Hoffman about Sundberg's killing, saying that this is not the outcome that anyone wanted, but justified the shootings as necessary. The city also released body camera footage of the standoff, which appears to depict several instances of Sundberg firing rounds from within the apartment, sending officers scrambling. It's also confirmed that bullets passed through apartment wall. The video shows the moment after snipers shoot Sundberg, but not the moment of the fatal shots. Competing narratives divide community over shooting. Sundberg's family has said that he struggles with mental health issues and was in the midst of a mental health crisis during the standoff and shooting. They argue that police did not have to kill him and criticize the city for not immediately all information about his killing. The woman whose life was in danger, meanwhile, argues that Sundberg had been menacing her for some time and nearly killed her and her children when he fired into her apartment. It is different from those like George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Amir Locke, and the activist shouldn't place Sundberg on the same conversation as unjust killings, as Blavity previously reported in particular tense moment. Last year, confronted protesters telling the crowd this is not a George Floyd situation. George Floyd was unarmed. This is not okay. Sundberg's father, who was in the crowd, responded to her, telling her that he was sorry for what happened to her. A fundraising campaign adds to the Sundberg controversy. I mean, like, so this sounds like a much more complicated situation than with George Floyd and Amir Locke. And so in terms of the more difficult positions, I mean, this is a situation, this is a rare situation where police might have actually been needed, but police officers are not given much information how to talk people down. So things were naturally going to escalate. Given this. Now, the fundraising campaign for the funeral costs are put on people. So, like, it's not okay, but mental health does intersect here as it changes de-escalation drastically. Yes. That is true. Yes. It's not the same situation. So there are situations where there are armed people who fight back, and I think it's important to choose your battles wisely, because otherwise things become much more difficult when it comes to making actual change. But yeah. So, Thomas Lane, one of the former Minneapolis police officers involved in George Floyd's killing, was sentenced Thursday to 2.5 years in prison on a federal civil rights charge. Federal prosecutors asked the judge to give Lane between 5 and 6.5 years in prison for his involvement in Floyd's murder. Lane's attorney, Earl Gray, asked for 2.25 years. District Judge Paul Magnuson said that Lane played a quote-unquote minimal role in the incident and also described him as a person of quote-unquote outstanding character. CNN reports Magnuson told the court that he received 145 letters in support of Lane. Sound usual to receive letters, but I've never received so many letters. Magnuson also recommended placed in federal prison so he can be near his family and friends. So, yeah, so Officer Lane was one of the ones who didn't intervene in one way or another. Now, when it comes to police departments, there's a lot of abusive situations, and there is a lot of pressure. And because of the lack of accountability, if you're put in a situation like this, I can understand how someone would freeze in a situation like this. That doesn't make what he did right. his lack of action was part of was a contributing factor to George Floyd's death. However, I don't know the level of so Chauvin had a long record of being a horrible person. I do not know that was the case with Lane, nor do I know the exact details of the situation. He deserves his sentence. I'm not saying that. He definitely deserves his sentence. I don't I'm just saying I don't know how much of that inaction was due to the fact that he would have to deal with that with Chauvin if he acted against Chauvin, whether immediately or for the rest of his career as a police officer, and may have frozen up and been scared. But that's and he pleaded guilty. This was the officer that pleaded guilty. The other two officers, I think, have not yet pleaded. So that suggests he might actually recognize that he did something wrong. Whereas I don't know if the other two officers who are at the scene have the same attitude. So, welcome to Fluid Voice, Rainbow Shelter News, Gen X edition. So, trans woman transferred to a male prison after allegedly impregnating 2 women in prison. So, Demi Minor, a trans woman in prison in New Jersey, has been transferred to men's prison after allegedly impregnating 2 women in the Edna Mahan Correctional Facility. Advocate reports the 27-year-old is serving a 30-year sentence for manslaughter. First off, a 30-year sentence for manslaughter. 30 years for manslaughter. I think that's like usually only a 10-year sentence. State is this? New Jersey. So, manslaughter. Okay. So, manslaughter is a sentence between 10 and 30 years. So, maximum sentence possible for manslaughter. And I suspect it's because she is black and trans. Extra focus on the black part in terms of the extended prison sentence. So it was reported in April that Minor's partners were pregnant with a then unidentified trans prisoner. New Jersey Advance reports that their nature of the relationship had been described as consensual. Though the state prohibits even consensual relationships between inmates, which seems extra cruel, actually, and a lot like slavery. Anyways, After the institution learned of the pregnancies, Minor and the two other women were put in a form of solitary confinement, Advocate reports. Minor later learned that she was now considered a security threat and given notice that she would be transferred to a vulnerable inmates unit at Garden State Youth Correction Facility. Transfer could be incredibly dangerous for Minor, according to a tweet by Justice for Demi. She was surprise transferred to Edna Mahan 2020 while earnestly requesting hormones and gender-affirming items. Things supply chains didn't there aren't supply chains for those items in men's prison. Now, according to the website, she may not have access to hormones, gender-affirming items, gender-appropriate housing, and surgery. And it isn't been necessarily an unprecedented situation for this prison. Because, of course, like, the level of eugenics, we don't want prisoners to have kids. We don't want prisoners to be in relationships. Be clear, Edna Mahan has housed pregnant inmates before, the statement reads. Edna Mahan has had inmates caught in romantic relationships before. None of this has ever constituted a security threat. Yeah, this is definitely a type of eugenics in action, along with treating prisoners like they used to treat slaves in the 1800s. Because, you know, prisons are basically slave-holding things. Well, let me alter maybe this will be a bit better. Okay. Sorry, I'm just my closed threshold seemed a bit high, perhaps. In a letter penned by Minor on the website, she explained that she attempted to hang herself in the van taking her to Garden State, Advocate reports. She was then placed on suicide watch when she arrived. The 27-year-old alleges that she was beaten during the transfer and that inmates at Garden State have harassed her. Additionally, whether or not Minor impregnated these women is dubious. According to the Advocate, it's not clear whether Minor was on HRT, which most likely would have barred her from being able to get anyone pregnant, which is not. HRT is complicated. It's possible to get someone pregnant on HRT. While being on HRT, that's... She, or someone on her behalf, tweeted about her hormone treatment being delayed due to COVID-19, but that she was back on in 2020. It is also important to note that a federal inquiry by the U.S. Justice Department in 2020 found that prisoners in Edna Mahan had accused staffers at the institution of sexual abuse and exploitation for decades. Minor was sexually abused while in foster care. She received a manslaughter charge at 16 years old after an act of misdirected hostility in which she killed her former foster father, whom she wrongly blamed at the time for the sexual abuse she suffered while under his care. Whatever that means. She'll be eligible for parole in 2037. Yeah, possible to have pregnancy on HRT, somewhat unlikely though. Yes, and it's just and if there's sexual abuse happening in the prison, it's possible that the people are pregnant due to the prison guard, or it could be a lot of factors. I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, 16-year-old gets a 30-year manslaughter charge. 30 years, the highest manslaughter charge you can possibly get in the state. And yeah, so gay Oklahoma mayor resigns due to concerns for his safety after altercation with police. Guards and pregnant prisoners frequently. Yeah, but like, they decided, oh, we should move this woman to a man's prison because she's black and she might have gotten other people pregnant. But definitely it's not eugenics. What are you talking about? Eugenics? What? Huh? Anyways, the out gay marriage of the Village, Oklahoma resigned on Monday, citing harassment and concerns for his safety. Adam Graham posted his resignation letter to the city manager Bruce Stone on Twitter. For almost 5 years, I've proudly served the Village as council member and mayor, Graham tweeted. It's been an honor to serve, and it's been my great privilege to break boundaries. I no longer feel safe to serve in my capacity here, and with a heavy heart that I tender my resignation. In his letter, Graham wrote that in the last month, I've been followed home from meetings, threatened while walking my dog, harassed at Starbucks and have had my tires slashed. Unfortunately, these malicious bad faith attacks are escalating. I no longer feel safe to serve in my capacity as mayor. Graham claims that the harassment stems from May 28th altercation with Nichols Hills police. Officers from neighboring city had reportedly stopped a speeding vehicle just inside the Village city limits. Nichols Hills police officer Brandon Edward claims Graham arrived shortly after he and another officer pulled over the driver, and that the mayor yelled at them about how they could not stop people in the village. His presence agitated an already uncooperative driver during the stop and put safety at risk when it didn't need. Edwards claims in his report of the incident. Graham reportedly refused to answer questions about the incident on June 20th Village City Council. I stood up against Nichols Hill police targeting Village residents, Graham wrote in his resignation letters. I will never apologize for standing up for the people I was elected to serve. I will never understand why some officials are more concerned with representing the interests of Nichols Hills than the interests of their constituents. So, on to fuzzier news. So there's this problem in Sesame Place. By the way, none of the news articles I saw covered all of this particular story, but I'll leave this as a jumping off point, because Jody Brown, mother who said Sesame Place characters shun two black girls, speaks out. Jody Brown, the mother who said Sesame Place employee dressed as Rosita character shunned her black daughter and niece, is now speaking out about the incident. Speaking with CBS News, Brown denied the park's explanation of the incident, saying it wasn't just a misunderstanding. The park later defended itself in a statement saying the no gesture seen several times in the video was not directed to any specific person. As they walk past. Unfortunately, there's been like a ton of other videos that have come out that show a lot of performers at Sesame Place being like really friendly with white people, and as soon as they see a black kid are just like, no. Rather, it is a response to multiple requests from someone in the crowd who asked Rosita to hold their child for a photo, which is not permitted, the park said. Rosita's character did not intentionally ignore the girls and is devastated by the misunderstanding. Brown refutes the park's explanation. No one was standing next to me. There wasn't anyone asking them to hold a child or take her photo, she told CBS News. There are a lot of incidences of people in Blavity doing a similar thing. The park said the performance costume may have contributed to the misunderstanding. The costumes our performers wear sometimes make it difficult to see at lower levels, and sometimes our performers miss hug requests from guests, Sesame Place said. But there are the Daily Show covered this and made fun of it because there are other videos of other performers doing the exact same thing. Like this isn't a one time, and also yeah, it's just bad. It's almost like there's some sort of, I don't know, systemic racism? No. What? So, Texas board member says high school's first black principal was fired for being a quote-unquote total activist. James Whitfield, a high school principal in Texas, was placed on paid leave after being accused of teaching critical race theory by the school board. The dangers of critical race theory, the thing where people learn about racism. School board member admitted recently to firing Whitfield for pushing critical race theory in a letter sent out to the school community. A video posted on Facebook during a Republican National Committee sponsored school board panel in June revealed a newly elected board member named Tammy Nakamura. The newly elected board member named Tammy Nakamura discussing that the former principal was fired for his anti-racist activism. How dare you? How dare you do activism against racists? How dare you be against racism? What? Okay, I think most people are generally of the opinion that racism is bad. So that suggests that being against racism is a good thing, and being an activist against racism is a good thing, and not something you should be fired over. Whitfield's letter was, quote-unquote, the straw that broke the camel's back, Nakamura said, leading to his end at Colleyville Heritage High School, according to Texas Tribune. Whitfield wrote a letter to the school committee following George Floyd's death, declaring that systemic racism is alive and well, and that as a community they needed to achieve consolation or conciliation for our nation. Education is the key to stopping out ignorance, hate, and systemic racism, Whitfield wrote. It's a necessary conduit to get liberty and justice for all. Now, we can talk about the problem with the liberty philosophical thing being related to the concept of people accomplishing everything on their own. Libertarianism is the natural endpoint of liberty as a philosophical principle. That being said, freedom and justice for all is something everyone should fight for and care about. But yeah, then Whitfield recalls the interview being all positive and leaving him with a sense of consensus in the community. But almost 2 years later, his letter would deem him a disruptor in the district. On July 26th, at a Grapevine Colleyville ISD school board meeting, Jetson Clark, a former school board candidate at Grapevine Colleyville ISD, accused Whitfield on multiple instances of teaching the dreaded critical race theory. Why would you want kids to know about racism and want to fight against it? Oh yeah, because people should have equity. Is encouraging the destruction of our district, Clark told the crowd. According to Texas Tribune, an audience member yelled out, "How about you fire him?" During the school board meeting, Whitfield defended himself. So, yeah, basically, Texas doesn't want anti-racist reasoning to be taught. So, eugenics. Texas professor calls for cure to homosexuality to prevent monkeypox outbreak. Remember the HIV thing? Remember in the 80s? Okay, I was born in the 80s, so I don't even really remember it, because I was like 5-year-old saying policy like redlining, etc. exists is not CRT. Yeah. But I don't remember and I don't remember it well, but I feel the existence. I'm very aware of the existence of the anti-gay HIV thing. So, like, currently, even now, been going on since the 80s, even now, if you're gay and if you're gay and if you're a man who's had sex with a man, or a woman who's had sex with a man who's had sex with a man, your ability to give blood, if you're honest, your ability to give blood or plasma is limited, because you're viewed as a high risk, because it's essentially a continuation on policy that have been in the country since at least the 70s or 80s, to prevent, to essentially say that gay people are too unclean. And currently, Republicans are using the same talking points, but now it's monkeypox. Look, the HIV thing is old news. Monkeypox, definitely caused by all the gays. But yeah, so Texas professor calls for cure to homosexuality to prevent monkeypox outbreak. I hate this quote. Male homosexuals have a higher incidence of STDs, and they can't have their own biological children. Not true. But so if a cis gay man and a gay trans man who is assigned female at birth end up in a relationship, they can just fuck and have like a kid. It's not. And also, I just the University of Dallas, or the University of Texas at Dallas, is investigating a computer science professor, Timothy Farage, after he published a tweet suggesting that a quote-unquote cure to homosexuality could help prevent the spread of monkeypox and other diseases. Last Friday, Farage published a now-deleted tweet that included a link to a news story noting that most of New York City's monkeypox cases were amongst gay and bisexual men. He wrote, "Can we at least try to find a cure for homosexuality, especially amongst men? Homosexual men have anal sex, which can lead to a variety of these." Heterosexual men and have anal sex too. They like, some women like getting fucked in the butt, and some men like fucking women in the butt. Like, that's still anal sex. That's not, doesn't make you gayer or less gay to have anal sex. That's just a thing. Farage, a 71-year-old who has taught at UT for 20 years, defended his comment to the Mercury, UTD's student-run newspaper, by stating that he isn't quote-unquote hateful or bigoted or homophobic or racist. Race wasn't even mentioned here, but I get the impression. Dudes like prostate stimulation. Yeah, I mean, that's true too. Like, you can have a man. There are a lot of instances. There are a lot of ways where you can have a man and a woman fuck each other in the ass. He said he respects transgender students' names and pronouns, and he doesn't share his personal views on homosexuality in the classroom. I don't think that consensual homosexual sex is a sin, he wrote. I have not said one word about homosexuals being bad people. I just think they're unclean and should be removed from society because it'd make the world better. Now, oh my god, I have homosexual friends just like you do. I'm guessing if you consider it's a friendship, it's probably only you that considers it a friendship. He said he knew 3 or 4 gay people who didn't want to be gay. I mean, if you look in the news far enough, you can find that, and that could very well be out of context, because sometimes people say things in frustration where they're like, yeah, that would make my life easier to not be discriminated against, but whatever. If somebody doesn't want to be, why not try to find a way to help them do that, he said. According to Dallas Morning News, my comment was to try to be helpful and compassionate. I never said a word against homosexuals or trans individuals or anything. I mean, said that it would. However, he also stated, I think it's a medical disorder. More research needs to be done about possible cures for gayness. You could say discrimination is a pain in the ass even. Ha! Ha. He added, male homosexuals have a higher instances of STDs and can't have their own biological children, he said. He said homosexuality aligned with anti-gay organizations and have referred to homosexuality as a public health threat. Similar views see LGBT identity as something that can be cured by so-called conversion therapy. Largest medical and mental health organizations in the US and the world have disavowed conversion therapy as a harmful, ineffective, and pseudoscientific form of mental torture. But they haven't done that. They haven't spoken out against that same practice being used to cure being autistic. But that's another story. Faraj is a graduate advisor who teaches undergraduate sections of discrete math and automata theory for undergraduates. Faraj has since deleted his Twitter account. Oh no, he got canceled, says a conservative somewhere, probably. Stephanie Adams, the dean of UTD's School of Engineering and Computer Science, says she was personally appalled by Faraj's comments, calling them in direct opposition to my personal view and her school's vision. Adams also noted that the school would offer multiple sections of Faraj's classes in the fall so students could opt out of having him as a professor. Faraj has a long, well-documented history of hostility on LGBTQ+ issues, the coalition statement said. Faraj's personal social media accounts contain much more offensive content. Dozens of students have made online statements verifying that Faraj's beliefs create an uncomfortable environment in the classroom. Being LGBTQ+ is not a quote-unquote medical disorder, and LGBTQ+ students do not need to be quote-unquote cured, the coalition statement read. Not holding a professor accountable for such statements is unacceptable. Merely disavowing Faraj's actions actively makes our campus less safe. So, while monkeypox is spread by skin-on-skin contact, prolonged respiratory exposure, like kissing, and from pregnant people to their fetuses, it is not a sexually transmitted disease, nor is it exclusive to queer men. The current outbreak is believed to have started at 2 gay rave events in Europe. From there, it has predominantly stayed among queer male social and sexual networks. So it's health advocates have warned against labeling monkeypox as a gay disease because it misinforms people about who can contract it and discourages others from medical help for fear of being stigmatized as a queer person. Yeah, it's awful. Everything is awful. White supremacists destroy Pride Merle video that they made got them arrested. So apparently some white nationalists defacing the LGBTQ community mural in Olympia, Washington has helped lead to criminal charges against 2 of the group's alleged members. One now has a warrant for his arrest, and more arrests could be on the way. Both men were among 31 group members arrested in June for trying to disrupt a northern Idaho Pride event. I remember that. Police, I think, maybe. Police said that the video of vandalism taken on October 16, 2021, and a video of a pre-vandalism quote-unquote test run in the area helped them identify 20-year-old Spencer Thomas Simpson and 23-year-old Colton Michael Brown as suspects. The men are both believed to be members of Patriot Front, a white nationalist hate group, according to the Southern Poverty Law Center. Both Simpson and Brown face charges of aiding and abetting or complicity with graffiti. So the prosecutors say they could pursue hate crime charges if they find that anti-LGBTQ animus led them to face the mural, which it probably did if they're part of a white nationalist group. Mid-July, Simpson pleaded not guilty to the graffiti charges. He is currently out on bail, although the judge said he cannot contact Brown directly, only Brown's lawyer. Brown, meanwhile, didn't show up for his court arraignment. The judge issued a warrant for his arrest with a $1,000 bail attached. Also, both Simpson and Brown are facing conspiracy to riot charges in Idaho after they were among 31 Patriot Front members arrested in June. Arrest disrupted the group's alleged plan to disrupt a pride event in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Photos and video of the arrest showed 31 men dressed in uniform of identical khaki pants and dark blue shirts and wearing masks. The men were armed with what appeared to be homemade riot gear and at least one smoke grenade, according to multiple media. So, hopefully, these particular white nationalist members get arrested. So, disability rights groups are fighting for abortion access and against ableism. You're not your pro-life scapegoats, and eugenics has no place in abortion access, said disability rights activist Stephanie Lynn Kaufman. The rest of the last name I cannot pronounce well. Terrible with it. So the conversation about abortion and other reproductive health care in the country is missing something. People with disabilities, or disabled people, depending on who you ask. Some people prefer one term versus the other. I tend to towards Judy Humans version, but that's since, and also because things Tiamat also that version. So also is disabled person with done activism related work, although not as major as Judy. Anyways, so since it became clear the Supreme Court would overturn Roe v. Wade, disability rights activists say the uproar over allowing states to ban or restrict abortion has largely overlooked the ways people with disabilities will suffer. At least 12.7% of the U.S. population is disabled, including from speech and limb differences, mobile disabilities, and developmental disabilities as of 2019, according to census data. Although, if you factor in actual data, it's probably higher. Anyways, I think one of the reasons that disabled people are not centered in these conversations, even though we should be, is that typically disabled people are desexualized, which is true. We're not seeing sexual beings. In fact, the assumption that we just don't have sex, when in reality disabled people do have sex. We need and deserve accessible, affordable, reproductive and informed reproductive health care, and that includes abortion. even after years of highlighting the long-standing lack of access to reproductive care, disabled people are still less likely to have healthcare providers, and routine checkups are more likely to have unmet healthcare needs because of the cost. According to the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, access to reproductive services may need an additional support person for physical access or to provide mental health support, said Town, who has cerebral palsy and uses mobility devices. For states that have banned abortion and people are talking about needing to travel out of state or to use telehealth services, many telehealth platforms are not accessible for disabled people. These are all barriers to healthcare. Accessibility of reproductive healthcare can be a challenge. Disabled people are more likely to live in poverty than those without, and with those who are non-disabled, and often rely on state insurance programs like Medicaid to meet healthcare needs. Not to mention, and forced sterilization does not count as reproductive healthcare. Yes. There's that factor as well, where the eugenics factor, worst spin-off of a TV show ever. Sorry, I was gonna make a joke there somewhere, but I couldn't remember the news station. However, I did want to mention the cost of things. So, average power chair, if you need a power chair, costs 10 to 30 grand. If you want, if you are capable of using an electric wheelchair, it would be less, but even like a good prosthetic leg is like 10 to 50 grand. Like like if you're disabled, you're expected to pay tons of money just to have something you can use regularly and not be in shit tons of pain. And just live your life more. So, anyways. According to the DC Abortion Fund, a nonprofit group that helps low-income people for abortions. However, only 50 states and Washington, D.C. cover abortions through Medicaid, a significant financial barrier for abortion access for disabled people. For example, West Virginia, which has the largest population of openly disabled people in the country, according to census data, solely provides state funds for abortion cases in life endangerment and fetal impairment. An analysis by the National Partnership for Women and Families found that abortion bans in the 26 states are certain or likely to ban abortion could affect up to 2.8 million disabled women, or disabled people, actually. Durable medical equipment for mobility, etc. is a racket. Yes. There are so many problems. There are problems with like only one company having like a decent was it like only one company that produces like the main computer chip that's used in most power chairs or whatever. It's just, anyways, since the Supreme Court ruling, disability groups like the AAPD and the Disability Rights Education Defense Fund have condemned the Supreme Court's action, detailing the myriad ways disabled people will be affected by the decision and calling out ableism in the national conversation about reproductive justice. Black people bear the brunt of this injustice because intersectionality is a thing, and Black and Indigenous people are obviously going to be affected way more than white people because there is less likely a loophole. Anyways, so about 1 in 4 black adults in the country are disabled, compared with 1 in 5 Americans, according to the CD. Okay, that's what I was thinking. It's more along that line, those lines. About 36% of black people, disabled people, live in poverty, compared to 26% of America's overall disabled population. Which, that doesn't surprise me, because generational wealth is a thing in the system we have. Once again, this is one of those things where, look, changing the economic system will not get rid of systemic racism, but it'll provide a means for the fight against systemic racism to have more of more power, if done right. And that's the whole thing. Yeah. Abortion advocates need to stop saying the main reason to want abortion is to not have a disabled child. Disability rights. Yep. That is definitely a thing. There's nothing like endangering a space, and the only reason they want access to the medical procedure is to not have somebody like you in their life. It's starting way tons of pro-abortion advocates who are disabled. Yeah, so there are lots of reasons to have an abortion, and technically you can have whatever reason you want to have an abortion, because it is your body. There is just systemic problems which have created a society which makes disabled people's lives harder, more expensive, and all that, and people get a glimpse of it. Instead of fighting against the problems of society, they usually say, no, I have a way of not dealing with that, so I'm just gonna not deal with that. But the fact of the matter is, people are only non-disabled for a limited period of time. Given a long enough timeline, in current society, will become disabled. And you'll either die young or become disabled, chances are. And instead of hoping for that, can set up society to not only help everyone, whether it be through accessibility or whatnot, like polio is coming back. My grandmother had polio. She slowly ended up, first she used a walker when I was young, then she ended up using a wheelchair. Here's the thing, like, there are a lot of other instances where you might end up in a circumstance like that, and it shouldn't be something that's scary. It should just be a part of life, because your life's not over. If you can't do things that you could do previously, that doesn't end your life. There's just... the world is big, and there's a lot of different things, and there are a lot of ways that you can experience life, even if it's different than the way you experienced life before. And we should be building a society that can make that sort of world, and that involves acknowledging that disabled people are discriminated against, Black people are discriminated against, Indigenous people are discriminated against, and if you fight against that discrimination, you'll be allowed to travel where you want, no matter what happens to you in the future, and love whoever you want. And that also there's all the homophobia and transphobia and intersex phobia and all that stuff is or other barriers that just prevent average person from being able to explore more of what life has to offer. So, on to our next story, which is the least important story here. Marvel confirms Michaela Coel is playing a queer warrior in Black Panther Wakanda Forever. I don't know Michaela Coel. Will be playing Aneka, the instructor for the all-female forces. By the way, I have problems with Disney and all that stuff, but when it comes to, I want to praise the good things and criticize the bad thing. And she has an enemies to lovers romance with Io. Okay, but like I don't know if the romance will appear, because more often than not, LGBTQ related stuff is just throwaway lines and small bits that are easy to edit out. Even in Thor Love and Thunder, the campest of them, that was the case. So it's just, there are queer superheroes in the MCU now, but they don't get to do much of the LGBTQ stuff. So Afghans in U.S. immigration limbo watch Ukrainians breeze through. So thousands of at-risk Afghans continue to wait for their humanitarian parole and visa applications to progress. Sarah is heading home from work on June 23rd in business attire and a headscarf when she was stopped at a checkpoint manned by Taliban guards in Afghanistan's capital, Kabul. They reprimanded her for not wearing clothing they deemed appropriate and demanded that she instead wear a head covering that conceals everything beside the wearer's eyes. Many times the Taliban stopped us on the street, Sarah said, adding that on some occasions, fighters have even pointed guns in her face and yelled at her. I changed my outfit because I have no choice. After returning to power late last August, the Taliban imposed sweeping restrictions on women, including the types of jobs they could do. According to the International Labor Organization, the share of women in employment is expected to fall by 21% by mid-2022. Zara, who is not using her real name for security reasons, like all Afghans mentioned in the story, said she was able to work in the United Nations compound in Kabul thanks to an agreement the organization reached with the Taliban. However, her brother, who continued, who worked with the U.S. Military in Afghanistan, received 2 letters containing death threats from the Taliban in March and has been forced to remain in hiding. Zara and several of her family members have applied for the Special Immigrant Visa Program, open to people who worked with the U.S. Air Forces in Afghanistan and Iraq. Yet, as her own SIV case languished, she also decided in October 2021 to apply for humanitarian parole, a procedure that allows certain at-risk applicants to temporarily enter the U.S. Her SIV case was eventually denied by the State Department in January 2022, and Zara then placed all her hopes on the parole process, but to her dismay, she has not received any response to her application in almost 9 months. And since March, has watched Ukrainians being processed more easily. According to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security statistics, more than 60,000 refugees fleeing the war in Ukraine have received parole or flight authorization to the U.S. under a Ukraine-focused parole program between March 24th and June 23rd. Yeah, this has been the case for almost throughout Europe. UK was practically turning away Syrian refugees, shipping off LGBTQ Syrian refugees to like an African country that where homosexuality is illegal. It's almost like if you're not white enough, the U.S. doesn't let you in the country as decent. And if you're unlucky enough to be Hispanic from Mexico fleeing a problem, there is a chance you might accidentally sign the wrong waiver and get hysterectomy. So, which I have no reason to think they've stopped with that, with the hysterectomies in the ICE camps that have been ongoing in the country. I think Trump made 39 or 49 policies that made the ICE detention camps, which are really concentration camps, they made them more dangerous. I think Biden has repealed one of like 39 or 49 policies, because Biden doesn't. But Biden still has a nationalistic view. Whether or not he admits it doesn't really matter. He still has it in terms of his actions. So, NFL player Carl Nassib reflects on a year of public being out. So, Nassib, who's now a free agent after being released by the Las Vegas Raiders earlier this year, details an agonizing decision to publicly come out last summer. Because there aren't a lot of NFL players who are out. In fact, this is something which has been true across a lot of sports. Like, I think the first gay soccer player in UK came out recently, and like the first one for like years and years and years. So on June 2021, the 29-year-old athlete came out as gay on social media, telling the world that he finally felt comfortable enough to get it off my chest. The decision came after 15 years of battling quote-unquote difficult times in navigating his sexuality. Ultimately, Nassib wanted to own the story and come out on his own terms, he told the show. One of my biggest fears is that I would only be remembered for being gay, the defensive end recalled, while recognizing that the fear was, in part, why he felt he needed to publicly come out in the first place. When people come out, they're coming out of the closet because they're afraid that they fear they're only going to have a negative impact on their life, on their relationships, on their job. Nassib said he wishes one day that coming out process would not be necessary. I just hope that one day we don't have that fears, but that's the society I hope for one day, and I hope I can be a positive push in that direction. Dad. As the first active player in the NFL to come out as gay, Nassib is creating space for other athletes to do the same, putting his money where his mouth is. The pro football player also donated $100,000 to the Trevor Project. I'd be donating $100,000 in matching funds to the organization for Pride Month. Now, when it comes to NFL players, it's a very complicated, good and bad, because I mean, these people are still rich, but at the same time, there's a social influence which occurs throughout society, and yes, the social influence occurring throughout society. I know it's a shock. But yeah, it's important for people to recognize that these are people you care about, like for the people who are fighting against LGBTQ rights, them realizing that people they care about, who they're fighting against, or people who are fighting for LGBTQ rights, understanding that's people they care about, they're fighting for. Like, both of those things are positive and helpful. So, A fight breaks out as neo-Nazi protests drag story hour event calling LGBTQ people molesters. Because, of course, three individuals were arrested Saturday during a neo-Nazi protest of drag story hour event in Boston. Member of the National Socialist Club, NSC 131, I'm sure the numbers are something bad, gathered across the street from Lauren Greenhouse, Grena House, where the event was taking place, with a sign reading, "Pedo scum off our street," which they... It's easy to hate child rapists. So they just say that anyone they don't agree with is secretly a child rapist, and bam. Easy way to hype up their crowd. So anyways, a fight broke out between the group's founder, 23-year-old Chris Hood, and counter-protester. Police broke up the fight and arrested both men on charges of disturbing the peace. Of course, both of them. Third man with the counter-protesters was arrested for vandalizing a car. Charges against the two counter-protesters were dropped, which is good. The Anti-Defamation League has identified the National Socialist Club as a white supremacist neo-Nazi hate group. Arguably a Nazi hate group, given that they are just... yeah. It turned out they were calling people within the LGBT community pedophiles, said Richard Cadet, who recorded the video of the march. They definitely were saying certain words that should never be said about anybody. Unfortunately, a group of mass neo-Nazi gatherers outside our fence chant militia Novak rhetoric. The Lauren Greenhouse said in a statement, the protest of drag queen event was a tool to gain attention. Any concern for the well-being of children was absent. Yeah, that's generally the case. In a statement, Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker, a Republican, said that while the First Amendment rights groups like NSC 131 would be respected, they are unwanted in the state. The minute you start to engage in any activity that's deemed to be violent, inappropriate, or hateful, people are going to stand up and get rid of you. I'm not a fan of respectability politics. Basically, yeah. Not a fan of white supremacists. So, there is a need for Black Sign Language interpreters in hip-hop. So, Black Sign Language interpreters are fighting for visibility in hip-hop, both on and offline. Before he worked with Chance the Rapper, Matthew Maxey just wanted to make underground rap music more accessible. A deaf Metro Atlanta native with deep love for of music, Maxey said he didn't really learn sign language until he attended college in Gallaudet University in Washington, D.C. I was like, what if I combined sign language with music and used that as a way to start my learning? He said. From there, Maxey began posting online videos of himself interpreting music from popular mixtape libraries like DatPiff, unaware that this would transform into a career for himself. Today, Maxey is one of the most prominent Black hip-hop interpreters in deaf and hard of hearing community. He's founder of Definitely Dope, a company that provides interpreting, counseling, and other services, and has toured with artists as an interpreter. In 2017, he toured with Chance during the Be Encouraged tour. The Chicago rapper allotted 50 free tickets to deaf and hard of hearing community during each stop on the tour. Galladay. Okay. Black interpreters like Maxi share they worry that the cultural meaning of rap songs can get lost in translation based on who is working as an interpreter. For example, during a Zoom interview, Maxi used the word drip to show how the term could be misconstrued by a sign language interpreter who only knows its traditional meaning. American Sign language for drip would involve flexing your downward repeatedly and downward motion. Oh, like this. But that's not what meant by drip. That's more like anyways, of course, rappers aren't referring to the flow of liquid when they use drip in their songs. So that using the sign, this sign would mean the deaf and hard of hearing community relying on this interpretation would be missing out on the cultural meaning assigned with the word. Instead, Maxi signs drip as it's used today in hip hop by rubbing his shoulders and chest. As if he's showing off an impressive look. Yeah. This distinction is one of several examples that showcase why it's not just important to increase the presence of interpreters in hip hop, but also to also be intentional in hiring Black people for the job. A lot of the culture is so natural for us, we automatically understand. Yeah, and that's kind of true of a lot of there's language and disability, and there's language in a lot of things that culture just gets lost in the things. So, Twitch suspends trans streamers Ian Alexander and Keffels for responding to. So, two major trans Twitch streamers. Now, I have heard a lot of questionable stuff about Keffels. Twitch, after separate mass reporting hate raids, Twitch swooped in to ban non-binary Star Trek Discovery star Ian Alexander and trans streamer Keffel from their Just Chatting channels for violating speech guidelines. Twitch says the suspensions are temporary. Say Keffels affected. Now, like I said, Keffels, there might be other questionable stuff that Keffels has said. Ian Alexander suffered mass report because there are mass reporting groups that show up on Twitch and YouTube. I think I might have been reported a few times on YouTube when my YouTube stream just started. Once, but yeah, so Twitch suspended my account, the actor announced on Twitter on July 20th. I was receiving racist and transphobic troll comments where they were saying slurs. I censored them, told the trolls to touch some grass, and then my account got suspended midstream. Touch grass for non-gamers mean get outside or get a life. Twitch characterizes the comment as quote-unquote violent hate. I appealed the suspension. I don't know when I'll get my channel back, Alexander posted. According to the platform's community guidelines, Twitch does not permit behavior that is motivated by hatred, prejudice, or intolerance, including behavioral behavior that promotes or encourages discrimination, denigration, harassment, or violence against protected groups, which it defines as a subset of population with a shared protected characteristic. By late Thursday, Alexander got his channel back. I got my channel back. Apology from Twitch. As of Thursday, Keffels was still shut out, but like I said, Keffels has historically done more controversial stuff, whatever. So sometimes Twitch bans people and doesn't give the real reason why they're banned. Destiny is an example of this. Destiny's probably broken far more of Twitch guidelines than anyone, and I don't think Alexander. It's like sometimes Twitch bans people not for the instance, but for the community they create. I feel like, or if they feel like they promote the channel and going a different direction. So I'm glad Alexander got their account back. So, House passes bill to protect same-sex relationships and interracial marriages. I just want to touch on this lightly because there's not a lot to say to this, because the Senate, I believe, has been like, oh, we've got more important stuff to deal with than this, from my recollection. So, nightclub kicked out gay patrons for quote looking quote unquote too gay. Well, too homosexual, sorry, is the actual. The backlash was swift. Of course we look gay, because we are, one of the men said, and I'll never be ashamed of it. So, patrons at nightclub along Quebec City's famous Grand Allée were 86th last week when an employee claimed the group was quote unquote too homosexual to stay. Quebecer Nicolas Gadreau posted to Facebook that he and his friends were dancing and having fun at the Le Dagobert nightclub, or the Dagobert Club, the night of July 16th, when staff informed them the group's dancing and attire weren't appropriate for the venue. They were told to leave. Some customers were bothered by our clothes, bothered by our dance moves, Gadreau recounted. He said the employee asked them to leave before things, quote-unquote, ended up in a fight. A fight, Gadreau quoted the employee. All we did was dance and have fun. Gadreau and other patrons at the club were throwing wine bottle corks at the group, pointing at and harassing them. Of course we look gay, because we are, he added, and I'll never be ashamed of it. Backlash was swift. The next evening, at the Festival d'été de Quebec, a major outdoor musical festival in the provincial capital, Canadian famous singer-songwriter Émile Bilodeau, I can't pronounce anything right, condemned the abusive behavior from the stage and encouraged the crowd to boycott the club. Then he asked them to sing along to a quote-unquote crude song targeting the venue. Following the performance, Le Dagobert claims working at the club were quote-unquote assaulted in response. Bilodeau, meanwhile, said on social media that he was threatened with legal action by the nightclub. He has since removed that post. A spokesperson for Bilodeau said Wednesday that, quote-unquote, in no way did the singer, quote-unquote, incite his fans to go after the bar or anyone else. Andorra. becomes the 33rd country with marriage equality. The new law also expands trans rights. The everyday horseradish. Is it me, or is it overwhelming irony for a club with a French name to accuse someone of being too gay? I mean, there's some irony there. However, sorry, I had to troll. Yeah, no, it's fine. There is irony there on some level, but on the other level, there's so much nationalistic and fascistic attitudes. Yeah, no, I got that impression. That's why I unclicked it. So, it's one of those things where it's an automatic thing. I think I've had some of my comments before on Twitch be like, wait a moment, is this a bad thing? Are you saying a bad thing? But like, yeah, no, it's France and Europe. I mean, this is Canada, and the problem is Canada has some aspects like America. It's just, I lost my train of thought. So Andorra becomes the 33rd country with marriage equality and expands trans rights. So lawmakers in the tiny nation, which I hadn't heard about until today, which has a population of 77,000, smaller than the city of Chicago in landmass, voted unanimously to allow same-sex couples to access to civil marriage. Today we vote for a law which includes all of us, a law of a modern country that ensures the free development of citizenship and bases its success on the most important nucleus of organization, the family, with all its diversity, says the president of the Democratic Parliamentary Group. Same-sex couples could form civil unions in Andorra starting in 2014. A bill to recognize same-sex marriages was introduced in Parliament in 2020, but got pushed back 10 times until it finally passed yesterday. Now, how long it will stay passed is questionable. Canada, the world's friendliest bigots. Yeah, I mean, they did ask nicely for the people to leave, for the gay person to, the gay people to leave the bar. So yeah, and Canada's complicated. Canada, much like America, still has memorials to Nazis. Canada has less than America, but Canada still has memorials to Nazis, much like America. And I know in Canada, people have gotten in trouble for defacing those memorials to Nazis. Like, I don't know how can just have that lack of self-awareness, but apparently Canada has it as well as America. But also they try to expand assisted suicide to any mental illness, which means essentially if you're depressed and a doctor decides that you're okay for assisted suicide, they'll go through with it, which has a whole level of problems in terms of eugenics type attitude. But yeah, and plus it's a loophole to expand eugenics type attitudes. Basically, the more I read about the news, the more I hate everywhere in the world. Although Andorra seems kind of nice right now. So the new law eliminates the differences between civil unions and civil marriage, and civil unions will be referred to as civil marriages now. It also adds rights for all couples as well, including no-fault divorce and alimony for spouses who did not have paid jobs during the marriage. The new law also creates a system for trans people to update their name and gender marker on legal documents without providing proof of medical care. God, I wish we had that where we are in United States, or where I am at the very least. Sorry, in the United States. As a U.S. citizen, I of course assume everybody is from the United States, as is required by by the Pledge of Allegiance requires it. It's secretly in there. It's in tiny text. Azerbaijan's LGBTQ plus community and supporters of murdered journalist Avaz Hafizli are being barred from his alleged killer's public trial, local activists have said. So, Hafizli was a journalist with the news channel Canal 13 and also was a tireless activist for LGBTQ plus rights, particularly trans rights, in Azerbaijan, which has placed at the very bottom of ILGA Europe's Rainbow Map ranking of LGBT plus human rights in Europe for years. He was an openly gay man and was critical of the government and lack of hate crime legislation in the country, even chaining himself to the gate of the Prosecutor General's office during one protest. In February this year, Hafizli was brutally murdered. His killer beheaded him and cut off his genitals. His cousin, Amrullah Gulaliyev, admitted to murdering him. First hearing was on June 20th and is currently ongoing, but local activists say that despite the courtroom being public, the LGBTQ plus community and media are being repeatedly blocked from entering. So yeah, that's certainly questionable in its own problem, but American ego, we all have it. Well, in America we do, yes. Buenos Aires officials sued over unjust ban on gender-neutral language, and authorities in Buenos Aires are being sued after banning gender-neutral language from being taught in school. Like people, or everybody, local, well, actually, different language in Buenos Aires. So local officials were collectively taken to court by political groups after they banned teachers from describing students as basic. I need to brush up on my international language. I said an @ sign. So chicas, cheeks, or sheiks. Groups including the Argentina LGBT Federation called the decision a violation of human rights, saying that the move excludes gender non-conforming individuals in classrooms. So the city government could not explain how the prohibition of the use of non-exclusive language in schools would violate city and national laws. We're completely convinced that we are going to win this case. Officials claim the terms are confusing for children and argued that they could be linked to a recent drop in exam results, but have cited no specific research towards the claim. Basically, it's new and they're confused and they don't like it. So, in France, a teenager in France has been arrested for attempted murder after allegedly stabbing an elderly man in the face because he thought he was gay. So you say irony, but he said it a little bit too early. Everyday horseradish. For now, France. In France. Teenager in France has been arrested for... yeah, I said that already. So, in the 16th of July, at around 5:15 a.m., a 71-year-old man was found lying in the ground by a roundabout in the commune of Beton, near Rennes. I think I'm probably pronouncing everything wrong. The victim had been stabbed 6 times in the face and had multiple fractures to his facial bones. Luckily, he survived the brutal attack. It did not take police long to identify the 2 suspects, an 18-year-old from Le Mans and a 17-year-old from Rennes, as they were found driving a car stolen from the elderly victim. While the 17-year-old has not been implicated in the attack, the 18-year-old will stand trial as an adult. The public prosecutor of Rennes, Philippe Estruc, said in a media release, a criminal investigation has been opened in counts of attempted murder due to the sexual orientation of the victim and robbery with a weapon. During questioning, the suspect said he met the victim on the night of 14th of July and that they had agreed to meet up 2 days later. The suspect admitted to having stabbed the victim in the vehicle and outside it. The public prosecutor said because of the victim's supposed homosexuality, but also to steal his car. If found guilty, he could face life in prison. A 17-year-old is found with the car, is under investigation, and could face charges relating to possession of stolen goods. So, in Ghana, LGBTQ plus Ghanaians, fight back against arbitrary arrests and bigotry. We want justice. Arbitrary arrests, blatant bigotry, and unlawful detentions are an everyday occurrence for LGBTQ plus people in Ghana, but activists are fighting back. So, on the 20th of May, 2021, Ghanaian police raided an LGBTQ plus human rights training workshop in the Haut-Volta region of the country. The workshop's purpose was to empower LGBTQ plus people by equipping them with the tools to document and report human rights violations against them. The 21 people in attendance, who became known as the Ho-21, were charged with unlawful assembly and were detained for 22 days under depraved conditions, suffered humiliation from inmates, and claimed they were sexually abused by police. One of the arrested says she was stripped naked and endured a forced genital inspection because she is intersex. We'll get to intersex related stuff soon. Don't worry. So throughout the course of their detainment, their constitutional rights were violated and their basic human rights stripped. The unfounded case against them was dismissed due to insufficient evidence, but the psychological scars remained. A year later, Ghana LGBTQ plus organizations are banding together to piece back the humanity ruthlessly snatched from these victims. On the 14th of June, 2 separate accounts were filed in Ghana High Court against the Inspector General of Police and the Attorney General of Ghana for violating the claimants' rights. First suit was filed on behalf of three of the arrestees who seek to challenge the state's violation of their rights, right to freedom of assembly, discrimination, unlawful arrest, and detention. The second suit is on behalf of the attendees, singled out because she is intersex. She told Human Rights Watch at the time she was afraid of being raped, as police egged on other inmates to assault her to prove she was female. The claimants are being supported by Queer Ghana Education Fund, Coalition for Support GH, well as other LGBTIQ QIA plus groups with the Initiative for Strategic Litigation in Africa, acting as legal advice. Yeah, it seems like police. So, according to this, police in Ghana have a way of turning LGBTQ plus victims into criminals because, of course, they do. Members told authorities it was a gay party. Police arrested the 29 men in attendance. Yeah, so it seems like some people in Ghana are, well, I mean, the police in Ghana seem to be actively fighting against LGBT rights. So, UK uses term differently, but a person who beat Greek LGBTQ plus activist to death walks free after 2 months in prison. 2 months! A man convicted of beating Greek LGBTQ plus activist Zach I can't pronounce words, to death, has walked free after 2 months in prison. The state agent, Thanasis Hortarius, was jailed in May on charges over the death of the 33-year-old HIV-positive LGBT plus activist, also known by his drag name Sakio. He was convicted of injury resulting in death rather than murder and was sentenced to a maximum sentence of 10 years. However, he's now been released on parole after his lawyers won a bid to have his sentence suspended. Kostopoulos was beaten to death in Central Athens jewelry shop on 21st of September 2018. The case was initially closed after Kostopoulos was painted as a drug addict who was attempting to rob the jewelry shop. But when video footage of the attack was revealed, the truth came to light. As he desperately tried to escape, attempting to crawl towards the door, Kostopoulos was relentlessly beaten by shop owner Spiros Dimopoulos and Hortarius. When police arrived on the scene, the brutality continued. Officers violently arrested and severely injured Kostopoulos, and shortly afterwards, the activist was pronounced dead. Annie Paparos, a lawyer representing Kostopoulos' family, previously said of the video footage, he is clearly only half alive, but they cut him from behind, making any attempt at resuscitation impossible. Hard not to conclude that this was a hate crime. Dimopoulos, Hortarius, and 4 police officers were charged in relation to Kostopoulos' death, but all 4 officers were later acquitted and walked free. In May this year, Dimopoulos and Hortarius were convicted and sentenced. It was agreed 77-year-old Dimopoulos would serve his sentence at home because of his age. Now Hortarius walked free. No one responsible for Kostopoulos' death remains in prison. So, yeah. Although, there may be some good news in Greece. So, Greece bans genital surgery on non-consenting intersex babies. Now, intersex babies can't consent, so I assume they're referring to the parents. Meanwhile, Republicans in the U.S. are proposing bills to continue the practice of genital surgery on pre-verbal babies. Okay, so not all babies are verbal afterwards, but anyways, that's nitpicky. The Parliament of Greece passed a law earlier this week banning sex normalizing surgeries for babies born intersex. Now, if you don't know, this is a long-standing practice of if you're assigned, doctors pick which sex they think you're closest to, and then if you deviate, if the deviation is too much, they force they have a surgery and don't always have to tell the parent, depending on the time period or the country. So intersex children are born with any number of chromosomal, gonadal, hormonal, or genital features that cause their bodies to physically manifest some combination of stereotypically male or female biological features. Not all intersex people are born with intersex genitalia, but when they are, doctors will often surgically quote-unquote correct them by reducing the clitoris, creating a vagina, or relocating the urethra so the child can urinate standing up. The surgeries are often unnecessary for the health of the child and are performed so the adults feel better about how the child's genitalia will look, even though the child obviously cannot consent to the procedure. Moreover, the surgeries, given that they're done at like right after birth, can lead to loss of sexual sensation, sterilization, and psychological trauma, according to Intersex Greece. But new law in Greece bans the procedures for children under the age of 15 unless parents can obtain a court decision. The bill imposes fines and prison time for doctors caught performing the surgery on minors or providing hormone therapy on intersex youth. Intersex people over the age of 15 can consent to such procedures under law. I was truly saddened by the mistakes of the past that led dramatic situations because we were lacking the knowledge and courage. Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis told Parliament, Reuters reports. So fucking terrible with names. Yes, Secretary General of Intersex Greece said the bill is a truly historic moment for all intersex children in Greece. Greece now joins Malta, Portugal, and Germany in banning the procedure. In US, the medical interventions remain legal. In fact, the proposed state laws to ban trans youth from accessing medically necessary gender-affirming care, which does not include surgery since trans minors do not get a gender-affirming surgery, contained exceptions for surgery on intersex youth, which is often performed on babies. In 2017, the family of the intersex child won a $440,000 settlement with Medical University of South Carolina after doctors operated on their child's genitalia to make them appear female when he was just 16 months old. It turned out the child was a boy, and the parents said the surgeons didn't tell them about potential complications or other options. So, there's a lot of Greek news, which is all Greek to me. I did a joke. Anyways, so the Greek Orthodox Church protests a baby's baptism because they got two dads. So, a baptism near Athens, Greek, 2 weeks ago for the children of a same-sex couple has earned an official protest from the Greek Orthodox Church. Fashion designer Peter Dundas and longtime partner Evangelos, who's terrible with names, witnessed the christening by Archbishop Elpidophoros of who's in Greece on a private visit. The couple have a son and daughter via surrogacy. One Greek descent. Following the Orthodox ceremony, the couple held a party in the Athens River where Greek pop star and entertained guests. So it sounds like the Greek Orthodox Church bitched about it. Blah de blah. I'm seeing the time essentially. So, outrage as Orban bashes Europe for mixing with non-European. So this is a problem I see. Not, I'm a big fan of intersectionality. I mean, the problem is the racism of. I feel like racism is the easiest to not be acknowledged in a lot of Europe. So Hungary's prime minister caused outrage Sunday after he bashed Western European countries for mixing European and non-European populations in Senate speech. Viktor Orban claimed the West is split in two, arguing that countries where European and non-European people intermingle are no longer nations. The ultra-nationalist conservative leader idealized an unmixed Hungarian race during his annual address at the Tusfanios Summer University in Romania. We Hungarians are not a mixed race. We do not want to become a mixed race, he said, which prompted a huge public outcry because it's racist as fuck. Ethnic Hungarians are a mix of Finno-Ugric, Magyars, and various assimilated Turkic, Slavic, and Germanic peoples, according to Encyclopedia Britannica. Kellen MEP from Hungary's opposition Momentum Party criticized Orban's speech. Statements recall a time I think we would all like to forget, she said. They really show the true colors of the regime. Orban alleged that the West, Brussels, and the troops of longtime Fidesz enemy. Oh my god. So he's basically saying, because whenever they say George Soros, what they really mean are the Jews are trying to force migrants into Central Europe. Basically, he's spouting the Great Replacement, which is anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. Oh, yeah, there's not a lot more to say about that. Death sentences for 3 gay men in Nigeria opens the door for more draconic judgment. A Sharia court ruling in Nigeria that saw 3 gay men sentenced to death by stoning could be a slippery slope to more violence against the queer community, LGBT plus groups. So, they were sentenced under Section 134 of the 2001 Bauchi State Penal Law, which states whoever commits the offense of sodomy shall be punished with death by stoning or any other means decided by the state. LGBTQ plus groups in the country have expressed fear and concern over the sentence. Nigeria is already hostile towards the LGBTQ plus community, and same-sex relations are punishable by up to 14 years imprisonment. This sentence, William Rashidi, director of LGBT rights group Equality Triangle, told Reuters the sentencing opens the door for more draconian judgments against LGBTQ persons. It's a call for violence. With this judgment, the times have been rolled back. It affects the very essence of freedom of expression and association. People have been given some sort of rights to attack, maim, and violate LGBT plus persons. The men have 30 days to appeal the decision, and any death sentences passed by Sharia court need to be approved by the state governor, Abdul Qadir Mohammed. The governor frequently posts on social media about issues such as floods and school attendance, but has not said a word about the men's sentence. Probably bad. Whether the court follows through with the sentencing or not, the case will likely rile up homophobes in the country and incite abuse towards queer people. They're dangerous terrains, and safety for others is a consideration. 2014, a gay man who was charged with 4 homosexual acts was sentenced to 20 lashes in court. The judge at the time, Nuhu Idris Muhammad, reportedly said he was proud of the sentence and that he believed the man should have been sentenced to death. The time reported that the same year, 11 men accused of homosexuality were put on trial. According to the Jibrin Danlami Hassan, the commissioner of Bauchi State's Sharia Commission, said the detainees confessed they were doing that dirty game. Reports stated the men were beaten and tortured, but Hassan denied. I can skip this. Basically, activists warned Russia's gay propaganda laws signaled heartbreaking turn on LGBTQ rights. Yeah, Russia's been moving towards anti-LGBT. This kind of affects everybody, so I kind of have to put this in the news stories. World Health Organization declares monkeypox outbreak a global emergency. So, the World Health Organization on Saturday declared the growing monkeypox outbreak to be a public health emergency of international concern. During a briefing in Geneva on Saturday, WHO Director Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said, "We have an outbreak that has spread around the world rapidly through new modes of transmission, about which we understand too little, and which meets the criteria of in the international health regulations." According to him, more than 16,000 cases of monkeypox have been reported across 75 countries, with 5 deaths confirmed in Africa. As reported by CNBC, Dr. Rosamund Lewis, known for her work as WHO's leading monkeypox expert, shared that 99% of all monkeypox cases outside of Africa were in men, and that those 98% of involved men who have sex with men. Oh, that's not good to say that. WHO's assessments, the risk of monkeypox is moderate globally in all regions, except the So in short, we have an outbreak that has spread the world rapidly through new modes of transmission, which we understand too little, and which meets the criteria of international health regulations. When it comes to cases like this, when it comes to people who are willing to mention symptoms or getting checked for diseases, that affects early signs. So, CDC announced first 2 cases of monkeypox in children. We became aware of these cases just this week, and we've been working with the jurisdictions to understand about these. Which are sometimes accompanied with fluidics. Spread is said to be made possible to anyone via close personal contact, including potentially touching objects or surfaces that were previously used by someone with monkeypox, or via direct contact with rash, scabs, or body fluids. Respiratory secretions can also cause spread. So there are a lot of ways for this to be spread throughout the population, and obviously a lot of anti-LGBT hate groups have associated it based off of that one statement by the WHO, but that is not indicative of anything as of yet known about the virus. So, because UK can't stop being awful, trans NHS worker called basically a freak. I guess they won a case against him. Female colleague saying, "I'm sick to death of this book with that pretending to be a woman." So, the amount of anti-trans attitudes in UK are ridiculous. Another coworker was heard saying, "That thing might rape me." Yeah, so once you hit a level of dehumanizing language, it usually means you are willing to accept the person's death. And a manager even asked what underwear she was wearing after hearing informal complaints complaining she was naked in a ladies' changing room. Trans woman who remained anonymous started a non-medical job in 2020 in the Trust's Northern General Hospital. Staff were informed by a memo that she was joining and using the female changing rooms, encouraging workers to be respectful to her. A request which, according to accounts from the tribunal report, fell on deaf ears, for lack of a better term. And also I was reading what they said. But yeah, I suddenly wish there was alcohol in this. Anyways, abuse began almost immediately after she joined and came to a head in July 2020 when she was left in tears after discovering a note on her locker that says, "Get out, you T-word freak." On the same day, she received deeply offensive and unacceptable abuse after hearing two female colleagues speaking outside the cubicle, with one saying, "We can drive it out of the department and maybe find a suitable leper colony for it." So, once again, I realize there's a lot of transphobia in Silence of the Lambs, but Silence of the Lambs does a great job breaking down how people use dehumanizing language to make them more willing to kill people, harm them, or kill people or otherwise harm them. And when you have people starting to talk like that, it gets really fucking creepy. An additional note was found on the trans workers' lockers in August 2020 that says, "Get out, T-word. Houston, stop," until the woman resigned from the trust in 2022. There was even an incident where she was questioned on whether she wore underwear at work or if she wore it in general after concerns among staff that she was naked from the waist down in the changing room. Basically, NHS are awful. Or, sorry, more specifically, UK is awful. But yeah, so at least it appears they won the discrimination case. So someone beat 14-year-old while drunkenly screaming, "Are you gay?" A man screamed homophobic slurs while beating up a 14-year-old boy has been jailed for more than 2 years. Teenager who remains anonymous for legal reasons was walking home from school on the 9th of February when he saw Lee Kavanagh drunkenly fall off his bike in Seacombe, Wirral. The boy asked if he was okay. Kavanagh responded by running towards him and grabbing him, screaming, "Are you gay?" repeatedly, and then swung him around numerous times before punching him 4 or 5 times and eventually fleeing the scene. This is one of those things where this would be funny if it weren't so tragic. Okay, it is a little funny, but that's partially because it's there's been so much bad stuff, and this is bad too. This is very bad. I don't think punching kids is a good thing. but there's a level of disconnect where it's hard to believe that yeah, it's just, people are weird. More importantly, cricket, Scotland's governance is institutionally racist, according to a report. Leadership of Scottish cricket has been found to be institutionally racist by an independent review dealing with another major blow to the sport after a similar scandal in the English game. The review is published on Monday following a 7-month investigation sparked by allegations from Scotland's all-time leading wicket-taker Majid Haq and his former teammate Qasim Sheikh. It found that governing body Cricket Scotland failed in 29 of 31 indicators of institutional racism set out by the consultancy firm leading the investigation. The body only partially passed the other 2 tests, and there were 448 examples of institutional racism. Hundreds of people came forward to recount their experiences as part of the investigation. From the conversation, 68 individual concerns have been referred to further investigation. So, racial abuse, inappropriate language, favoritism towards white children from public schools, lack of transparent selection process. So, the governing body has been placed into special measures until at least October 2023. With Sports Scotland effectively taking control of the org. That's a pretty basic story. Mental health services for young Brits not crisis point is something. I'm just running low on time. So before I switch over to something else. I don't want to go too long with the news because I've been doing this for almost 3 hours. So the UK Supreme Court to hear Scottish independence case in October. So Scotland's pro-independence First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has said she intends to hold a fresh vote on independence in 19th of October 2023. So basically, next year, there is a chance for Scotland to become independent. Chance, but Britain will probably reject it, and there'll be all sorts of other problems. Treasury won't reveal equality impact because it would be too complex for the public, so the Treasury won't release impact to show the impact. Treasury won't release information that would show the impact of disabled people on spending decisions in March's spring statement because it's too complex for the public to understand. So the Treasury has told Disability News Service that it will not in the public interest to release analysis that could be misleading for a general audience, a move that has been branded a disgrace and insult by leading labor activists. So there's been tons of problems when it comes to disabled people getting proper pay, and the Treasury won't release things, and probably because they don't want to show how awful things really are. Yeah, this is just research showing a lack of accessibility, which is true pretty much everywhere. Ministers ignore funding call as progress on institutional care grinds to a halt. So they're not lending more money to cutting the number of people. Or ministers have ignored calls from their own consultants to invest money in cutting the number of people with learning difficulties, autistic people in inpatient mental health settings, despite new figures showing progress has ground to halt. So the consultancy report was published alongside a new action plan for implementing the government's Building the Right Support program, which aims to ensure people with learning difficulties and autistic people have the right support in place to live a quote-unquote ordinary life in the community rather than forced into mental health. Oh, okay, so they're keeping people in mental health institutions. Gotcha. They're saying they should cut that. But what I really want to do, what I really want to mention the last story, because I want things to end on a happier note. Real life sport of Quidditch changes name to distance itself from J.K. Rowling. So Quidditch, yes, it's a real sport, has officially changed its name to quadball in an effort to distance itself from J.K. Rowling. So J.K. Rowling has gotten so bad that a sport that she invented to some degree and has been taken over by fans has now been like, no, we don't want to associate this sport with J.K. Rowling. Please, just no, stay back there. But like, so the sport was inspired by the wizarding game of the same name in Rowling's Harry Potter books, but in an effort to distance itself from the author, on Wednesday, the International Quidditch Association made the announcement it would be adopting the name Quadball. Anyways, it comes after U.S. Quidditch and Major League Quidditch changed to U.S. Quadball and Major League Quadball. USQ and MLQ previously released a joint statement slamming J.K. Rowling's anti-trans positions, and now their mission to distance the sport from Rowling has become a reality internationally. Look, it's impressive. She who shall not be named. Yeah, like even that joke, like there are some things that are just so. J.K. Rowling has made a real impact on culture, and it's funny to see that same impact be used against her after she says horrible things. So Chris Lau, chair of the UKQA Board of Trustees, told Reuters, I still alarm set up. Anyways, we're excited to be joining USQ and MLQ in changing the name of our sport and supporting this change across our members worldwide. We are confident in this step, and we look forward to all the new opportunities Quadball will bring. This is an important moment in our sports history. Quadball has previously been dubbed the world's queerest sport due to the high number of non-binary LGBTQ plus people that compete. That might be a factor. Inclusion is at its heart, and with the sports rules stipulating that a team cannot have more than 4 players who identify as the same gender in a team of 7. It's, by the way, that is not a bad rule for team sport. There are a lot of team sports that could work interestingly that way. Anyway, its commitment to diversity is evident in the demographic of the sport. More than 11.9% of quadball players identify as trans compared to an estimated 1 to 1.3% of the general population. 5% of the quadball players identify as something other than heterosexual. 55%. Yeah. USQ and MLQ website states, we want our sport to be inclusive of people different ethnicities, cultural backgrounds, ages, languages, genders, sexual orientations. The sport sees 2 teams of 7 players mount non-flying broomsticks and run around a large pitch. The players attempt to score balls by tossing the ball through 3 hoops of varying heights at either end of the pitch. The name change will not only distance the league from brawling, but also enable it to expand, as it was unable to do so with Quidditch trademark by Warner Brothers. The organization will be able to get sponsorships, increase its revenue, and open the sport to new opportunities. Mary Kimball, executive director of U.S. Quad Ball, said renaming the sport opens up so many more revenue opportunities for both organizations, which is crucial to expansion. Quad Ball today has nearly 600 teams in 40 countries playing the game, according to IQA. I did not know it was that big. Quad Ball has provided a safe place for players and has helped so many people come out of the closet and live life fully. I kind of... yeah. There's some like half of that is like in jokes from the guild I was a part of before the legal suit against Activision Blizzard started up, and I realized how bad the company was. But yeah. So with that, with the importance of talking, I believe I will bid you adieu for a bit of a break. I will return and switch everything over to League of Legends gameplay after this, because I like to play that game despite the toxic community. And also I report toxic players. It's cooperative. Yeah, I mean, League of Legends also doesn't, like, a lot of esports do not have the same type of gender separation given a lot of esports aspects, but yes. So thank you, everyone.
Justice is indivisible. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere.
Sex and race, because they are easy, visible differences, have been the primary ways of organizing human beings into superior and inferior groups, and into the cheap labor on which this system still depends.
No, you all tell me to go and hide my tail between my legs. I have been beaten. I have had my nose broken. I have been thrown in jail. I have lost my job. I have lost my apartment for gay liberation. And you all treat me this way? What the fuck's wrong with you all?
We want no more segregation. We will accept no more discussion of segregation. And I would appreciate it if you would stop shaking your head in agreement when I don't think you understand what we are talking about.
Freedom is merely privilege extended unless enjoyed by one and all.
All we are doing with this bill is allowing 2 people who love each other to have that love recognised by way of marriage. That is all we are doing.
I speak not for myself, but for those without voice can be heard. Those who have fought for their rights, their right to live in peace.
Sometimes, especially in this body, I feel as though if Christ himself walked through these doors and said what he said thousands of years ago, he would be maligned as a radical and rejected from these doors.